catch this. My name is Trudy Ray. On May 17, 2026, the World Health Organization declared a public health emergency of international concern in response to an Ebola disease outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, also known as DRC. This is just one of many repeat Ebola outbreaks in this area. However, this one is just a little different. More in a few moments. Don't go away. Unlike many prior outbreaks, this outbreak is caused by ortho-Ebola bundibugyoense, commonly known as Bundibugyo virus, a less common member of the Ebola virus genus. In humans, Ebola disease is known to be caused by 4 species. The most lethal is ortho-Ebola zairiense, commonly known as Ebola virus, or formerly known as Zaire Ebola virus, and this one was first recognized in 1976 in what was then Zaire and what is now the DRC. Also in 1976, another species arose in Sudan. This one is called ortho-Ebola sudanense, commonly known as Sudan virus. Finally, there is ortho-Ebola taiense, commonly known as Tai forest virus. Bundibugyo virus was first identified in 2007 in western Uganda. Although the DRC and Uganda have had more than 20 documented Ebola outbreaks, most were caused by Ebola virus, making this only the 3rd known outbreak linked to Bundibugyo virus. Scientists suspect that bats may be the natural source of the virus, but exactly how it first spread to humans is still unclear. One common misconception about Ebola viruses is that they could become airborne, but this concern is largely unfounded. Although infection through inhalation of viral particles is theoretically possible, people do not become infected simply by breathing the same air as an infected individual. The virus primarily targets immune cells that circulate through the bloodstream and lymphatic system, rather than cells residing in the airway. Ebola viruses do not replicate effectively in the upper respiratory tract, so an infected individual releases very little virus into the air when exhaling. Instead, transmission requires direct contact with infected bodily fluids like blood, vomit, and other secretions. Transmission most commonly occurs when somebody cares for an infected individual or through exposure to the bodies of those who have died from the disease. Because the virus already spreads very effectively through such close contact, there is little evolutionary pressure for it to become airborne. Symptoms of Ebola virus disease typically appear between 2 and 21 days after exposure and often resemble those of common viral infections. These include fever, fatigue, headache, sore throat, and muscle aches. As the illness advances, more severe complications like vomiting, diarrhea, organ damage, and hemorrhage may occur. The disease is fatal in about 25 to 50% of cases. Unlike for Ebola virus, there are currently no licensed vaccines for Bundibugyo virus. Several experimental vaccines are under development, but these remain months away from clinical testing. Ervibo, a vaccine approved for Ebola virus, is also being considered for potential use. However, it is not authorized for Bundibugyo virus, and evidence that it protects against this virus is limited and inconclusive. There are likewise no approved therapies specifically for Bundibugyo virus. Treatment is primarily supportive, focusing on maintaining hydration, managing symptoms, and providing intensive care when needed. Nonetheless, several therapeutic candidates have been prioritized for clinical evaluation, and these include the monoclonal antibodies MBT-134 and maftivimab, and the antiviral drug remdesivir. Combination approaches such as pairing a monoclonal antibody with remdesivir are also being considered for further study. Controlling Ebola outbreaks, especially in the DRC, has historically been very challenging for many reasons. Cultural practices like caring for sick family members and traditional burial rituals that involve close contact with the deceased can facilitate transmission. In addition, weak healthcare infrastructure, ongoing conflict and instability, and mistrust of authorities or public health efforts all complicate response measures. Attempts to contain outbreaks can also be strained by pressures on public global health systems. Changes in international support, including reduced funding for aid programs and shifting relationships with global health organizations, make outbreak control more difficult. Continued vigilance, sustained investment in research, and strong international cooperation remain essential to managing this outbreak and preventing future ones. That's it for today. Thanks for listening. My name is Trudy Ray, and I'll see you next time on Catch This.